So let's talk about mother wounds and father wounds and narcissistic relationship. So the funny thing about this sort of constant presence of online mental health content is that I'm starting to see that we're using different terms to talk about similar things over time. I know, for example, there has been some reluctance for some people to use the term narcissistic, and I get it, because I have to say that some people spend more time trying to figure out if their parent is narcissistic than they do identifying that what is happening in the relationship is not okay and focusing on the effect it's having on them. Now, I had not heard this whole mother wound, father wound language until recently. And now, oddly, I guess it's sort of a Baader-Meinhof effect thing. I'm hearing it everywhere. I was even reading a tabloid article, as I do, this morning, and it came up again. So I'm like, okay, I got to dig deeper into this. It seems to be sort of a repackaged description of what happens in narcissistic, toxic, and antagonistic parenting relationships. It's not any sort of official term in psychology, but my compilation after reading about a dozen articles from a variety of descriptions is that the mother wound and the father wound, they're actually different. Some of this seems to be sociological, since fathers and mothers take different roles in children's lives, at least till now, and these parental roles by gender are going to have different effects on their children based on the child's gender, and everything I have found on this is all based on the gender binary, so please keep that in mind. So that's all there is: mother, father, and children who are boys, children who are girls, right? I'm also seeing that a lot of the mother-father wound literature is also attempting to connect to the attachment literature. So that's my read on this, right? So listen to these descriptions and you're going to see where I'm going with this. So let's start with some cobbled together descriptions of the so-called mother wound. Almost all of the stuff I found on the mother wound took on the issue of mothers and daughters, which does miss, of course, that boys can be harmed by their mother's behavior as well. But I got to work with what I've got here, and that's what they wrote about. I do understand, however, that in many, if not most cases, that daughters are going to be affected in a different way by a mother because of societal expectations around the mother-daughter relationship and social learning, basically, with the girl identifying with the mother in a specific way. Doesn't matter how many mothers the child has. Daughter might have 2 mothers. Doesn't matter. It's just going to have that effect. In its simplest form, the mother wound is an insecure attachment with a mother. And that these mother wounds tend to be intergenerational, happening one generation to the next to the next. That the lack of a secure attachment with a mother leads to repeating that cycle by the mother with her own children and so on and so forth. A mother who is wounding, a wounding mother, I guess, is not attuned to her child, may also be competitive with her child, may have poor boundaries, and expect her daughter to be her friend and her shrink. And sometimes sons of these kinds of wounding mothers may actually find that their mother may also share inappropriately with them as well. They almost feel like they're a de facto husband to them. These are often emotionally immature and emotionally unavailable mothers, resulting in a sort of grail quest for love, often in the wrong places by their children, especially their daughters, right? Who'll often will get into unhealthy relationships. And the boys who grow up with these mothers, and this is a guess on my part, may end up being subjugated in their relationships with women and may feel that in order to love someone, you have to put up with a lot of bad behavior. So you're already getting a whiff of what this is. A mother who is emotionally not attuned or not connecting to a child, relying on their child to meet their needs, but not vice versa, not meeting the child's needs. It's about entitlement and marginal empathy and selfishness. All of these things cause the mother wound that manifests in all that stuff I just shared, getting into unhealthy relationships and whatnot. But what about dear old dad and the father wound? Same thing. Emotionally immature and emotionally unavailable fathers who are often manipulative, not having a sense of secure attachment with that father, the lack of attunement, all the stuff we'd see in the mother wound too. The fallout of the mother wound can include things like self-esteem issues, difficulty in maintaining healthy relationships with women, feeling not good enough, getting into unhealthy intimate relationships, being emotionally detached from people. Similar fallout, similar issues raised with future relationships. There are some assumptions that are made about fatherhood when discussing the father wound, right? Mainly that the father may not ever notice or see their child. And perhaps they'll only notice their child if they achieve something. And maybe not even then. And maybe then they'll feel competitive with their child. But it can result in a similar kind of perfectionism that we also see as a result of mother wounds, but also an achievement orientation of always doing and forever trying to prove oneself to the father. So let's make this simpler. Because anyone who has a narcissistic parent has either a mother or father wound and may have both. And as I have shared in other videos, there is a secondary harm that may come from a parent who may not be narcissistic, may even be a parent you felt connected to, but who didn't or perhaps couldn't have your back and protect you from the toxicity, manipulation, control, and abuse of the narcissistic parent. That lack of a protective parent is also a potential cause of a mother or a father wound. So, what do? That's where I felt that the guidance was tricky. You do the usual stuff. You set the boundaries. Good luck with that. That's what they told people to do. Like, how would you do that? But sure, set boundaries. Get therapy. Yup, but make sure your therapist understands narcissism. Understand how what happened to you with a mother or father or both may be showing up in how you behave. In essence, understanding your why. I would throw in there that if you want to heal from a parent wound, forget all this mother-father stuff. You can call it a parent wound. Then figure out how you or what you do to feel safe. Again, what you do. Some of this may be trauma responses like fawning or freezing. Some of this may be doing, like being better or fixing or achieving or even having low expectations for yourself and for the world. Sadly, some of the guidance on mother and father wounds talks about forgiveness because your parent in this model is believed to have their own parent wound. Now that gets tricky because you already probably have thought about that a lot, but it might very well have spent more time finding empathy within yourself for your wounding parent than you have for yourself. The one thing I learned from all this mother-father wound stuff is that while all children of a narcissistic parent have a parent wound, not all parent wounds are caused by narcissistic parents. Some may be secondary to a parent living with addiction or a parent perhaps with other behavioral issues and who lacks support. Some of it may relate to not having sufficient support, and this gets tricky because you can appreciate what your parent went through. Ultimately, I would argue that the key to healing here would be to be able to create a coherent narrative in which you recognize that you are not to blame and their behavior is about them, not you. That your behaviors and schemas connect to your parents' behavior and that you are not doomed to repeat the cycle. Most people with a coherent narrative don't repeat the cycle. It can mean you having to learn to soothe and reassure yourself, take chances, and build up chosen family and other supports. Anyone who has been through a narcissistic relationship, in essence, has people wounds. And this is why, for many survivors, relationships become scary and can also feel exhausting because there are spaces where we have to be vigilant and get everything right and be perfect and hyper caregive. People wounds, parent wounds, mother wounds, hell, even sibling wounds, friend wounds. The healing starts when we start connecting the dots, understand ourselves, and ending the cycle with your story. And none of this is easy. but it is possible. And it can end with you. I hope that helps you understand whatever form of wound from whatever relationship you've been through. Obviously, the parent wounds run deeper, but I hope it helps. Thanks again.